Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I'm sporting my Costas shirt and feeling all 30 years of my 30 years of cheers and beers and tears. We're going to begin our 30th anniversary next month. Costas will be involved, but we're kicking it off with our friends at the Beaumont. That's not State Fair. That's not El Guapo. It's right on the corner in Catonsville, right next to Franco's. I've had some delicious pizza and meatballs and bookmakers there. We're going to be at the Beaumont, new restaurant, Chop House, crab cakes. It's the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. It's all presented by the Maryland Lottery. Let yourself play. We're back out on the beat this week. We'll be at Fade Lease having a crab cake on Wednesday. We got some great guests. And then on Friday, we're going to be at Nick's Grandstand Grill. And next Wednesday, the 17th, with our mayor, Brandon Scott. I tell you what, as I wake up to my Rofo coffee here this morning and honor my friend Bill Cole in the Cole Roofing mug here, everyone's happy when the Ravens win, Luke Jones, aren't they? Doesn't matter how they win. Doesn't matter how many times the quarterback runs into the linebackers. Doesn't matter how many overtimes it takes or field goals it takes or comebacks. When the Ravens win, all is well in the world. So a good couple of days here and kind of a weird game in Miami on Thursday night, but so far so good and not a snowflake from the sky as the Vikings left town on Sunday.
Well, you just said it. So far, so good. All you have to do is look around at the rest of the NFL and take some satisfaction in the fact that the Ravens survived on Sunday, because you see what happened with Buffalo against Jacksonville. You see results every single week where something happens where you just scratch your head. And we can talk about the Ravens getting blown out by the Bengals a couple weeks ago, certainly. And we talked at length about that. And we've talked about the Ravens' issues. We know this isn't a perfect team, but you're seeing a lot of good teams, or at least perceived to be good teams, get tripped up over the course of a 60-minute ball game, week in and week out in the NFL. And the Ravens have avoided that for the most part. And they're 6-2. Is it as dominant as what 6-2 was 2 years ago? No.
By the way, they've almost lost every week. So when you say they've avoided that, they've a couple of overtimes, all sorts of things that have happened, but Bill Parcells, your record, right? They're one of the good teams, whether that's perception or reality, or being down 2 touchdowns 3 times at home in the last 5 weeks, right?
Yeah, we can talk about who we think is really good, and it changes week to week. The latest team that everyone's going to be talking about is the Tennessee Titans, who, oh, by the way, just lost Derrick Henry. But, hey, give them credit. They go to Los Angeles and beat the Rams on Sunday night. They're the top team in the conference record-wise. But you look at this Ravens team, and as much as you look at some of these games and say, all right, well, you needed a 66-yard field goal to beat Detroit. You should have lost to the Colts. You go down the list and you can poke holes in just about any of these performances, even the blowout win over the Chargers. It's like, well, it was a West Coast team playing at 1 o'clock on the East Coast. You can do that with every win if you want to, but you'd much rather be 6-2 than, say, Kansas City, who did creep back over 500 on Sunday, but you look at the Chiefs and, boy, they have problems. It's not an impressive 5-4, and you look at them and you keep waiting for, the switch to be flipped. But in the case of the Ravens, imperfections and all, they're 6-2, and you'll take that.
And the Chiefs will have to come here this January if this holds, right?
Right. Well, there's still so much football left. Keep in mind now.
Well, the idea is to make them come here. That's where we are right now. The idea is you're going to have to come here and play, and that's the seat they're in right now, and you don't want to lose that seat. Not in Miami on Thursday night for sure.
Well, and that's the big one. And I joked about this on Twitter late Sunday night, where if you're kind of looking around the AFC and we've seen these crazy results, at least one every single week, right? We were joking about it. How you kind of went through who the number 1 seed was each week, and then they were losing to someone where you just scratch your head. If that continues to hold, the Ravens should be on upset alert going to Miami, despite the fact the Dolphins have only won a couple games. It's been that crazy, right? That's what we've seen around the league, and it's a short week. Ravens played in overtime, deep into overtime. So, that's going to be a challenge, but it's about surviving. It's about getting the W, and that doesn't mean that the Ravens can be dismissive of their issues, but you do look at it and say, hey, there's still something to the idea that they're persevering and they're coming back and they're getting these wins. And, I made the comment at BaltimorePositive.com in my 12 Ravens thoughts that I look at the AFC right now and all the teams that are perceived to be contenders, teams that are perceived to be good, whether they're great, whether they're good, whether they're okay, they're all dented cans. Depending on how you look at them any given week.
Well, the Rams look more dented on Sunday night than they did on Sunday afternoon, right? It only takes one. It only takes Josh Allen to go out there one time against Jacksonville, not be able to score touchdowns, lose a football game like that, for you to say, we'll see him in January. We'll do that. We'll figure out how to do that, and he won't put 35 up against us. And the snow will be blowing sideways, but it'll be here and not in Buffalo because we don't want to have to go back up there and play. I would think that's part of it. Last year was so weird with the plague and fans and no fans and emptiness and the driving rain in Foxborough, all that weirdness of the emptiness of last year. This is the year where you have fans, and I think you and I felt that sitting next to each other at the end of the game. We're behind glass, and a lot of people talking about how loud the stadium got at the end. This is a place you don't want to come and play in January, and we're 26 seasons into this. Haven't been a whole lot of November 11ths with games on the schedule where we've looked up and had a chance to be the one seed. And to your point, with all the dented cans out there, we played a generation here where the Patriots were never a dented can. The Colts under Peyton Manning were never a dented can. The Pittsburgh Steelers or the Bengals or both were always in the way. And the fact that there's this year where, hey, Dak Prescott, is he going to be the next Stallback or Aikman, or is he not going to make the playoffs and they're going to blow this early season thing they've done? I mean, all of these quarterbacks are a little suspect. And all of the teams have enough problems, whether it's our kicker's better than your kicker, your special teams gives up returns to begin games, or whether it's just we're going to deal Von Miller to the Rams and they're going to be a super team. Okay, I mean, I've seen plenty of super teams super team didn't look too good on Sunday night. So there's trading deadline, there's subtraction by Derrick Henry. There's subtraction by any quarterback that's gone. Aaron Rodgers now, right? Like, look at what the Packers were. And that's maybe brings it into this game, which is me getting tons of grief in social media because usually the things you get for asking a tough question. Lamar ran into contact 21 times and has to go back out and play 96 hours from now. I don't expect Thursday to be a party down in Miami. I don't expect to go down there and win 51-3. I really don't.
Well, and I mean, that's not exactly a bold statement just based on how the Ravens have played all year and based on their flaws. And let's be clear, we're talking the Ravens are a dented can too. It's just their contents at the end of 60 minutes, or in the case on Sunday, what was it, 69 minutes and 46 seconds, 48 seconds, whatever the final second total was when Tucker made the game-winning field goal. They're figuring it out. And it's funny, as I kind of look at this team, they almost remind me a little bit of a battle-tested team in the NBA at this point, where they'll go through these stretches where they don't start particularly well. They play selective defense, let's say that at least, if we're going to use the NBA comparison. But they've shown time and time again, Bengals game notwithstanding, but over the rest of their seven other games, that a run's coming. And it's coming, that they're going to flip the switch, so to speak, and they're going to figure out a way to win a ball game. It's been uncanny. Now, can you continue to do that over the course of a full season? Kansas City did it up until the Super Bowl last year, right? I mean, I remember famously Super Bowl week, you and I were talking with people via Zoom of Kansas City has this uncanny ability where they don't look very good over the course of a large stretch of the game, and then they just figure it out. The Ravens are dealing, they're experiencing some of that right now, and they're 6-2. But we also know there are 9 games to go, and they are still approaching their toughest part of the schedule. I mean, first half of the schedule was always more forgiving. That's why I did like their chances to survive their early season, crazy late summer run of injuries, because the schedule was a little more forgiving. You beat Minnesota, and by the way, the Vikings are kind of the opposite of the Ravens. Their 5 losses are all by 1 score. I mean, just think about that. They have 5 losses where they've lost by a single score, and the Ravens are not exactly the opposite, but very clearly they've won a lot of close games, and we know how easily that can be flipped. And it comes down to coaching. It comes down to doing the little things well. typically, although Sunday was a poor example of it, comes down to being really good in the special teams area of the game, which the Ravens usually are, although they certainly weren't on Sunday. And other than talking about Justin Tucker, so it's about survival. And this AFC specifically, I think you could certainly make an argument, although maybe not so much Sunday when you consider the Cowboys, you consider the Rams, but the NFC has some teams that look to be potential juggernauts, let's say, I guess. The AFC, it looks very wide open. And I mean, the Titans, as much as you give them credit for what they've done over the last month, they just lost Derrick Henry. So what does that mean for their identity? Maybe, and this is an argument you make for Tennessee, if I'm breaking that team down, maybe the loss of Derrick Henry forces you to evolve a little bit, and you hope, even if it's a slim chance, he comes back week 17 and you have a fresh Derrick Henry for the playoffs. Now that could make them a little scarier than the rest of the field, but otherwise you look at all these teams. I mean, okay, nice win for the Chargers, but it was the Eagles, and we saw the Chargers really struggle the previous couple weeks. Buffalo lose on Sunday to Jacksonville. I mean, just an inexplicable loss a week after they had kind of gone through the motions through the first 2.5 quarters coming off their bye week. The Raiders, that I give them credit for what they've done on the field, but all the turmoil there, do you wonder if it finally catches up to them at some point? Don't look now. The Patriots actually look halfway decent. I mean, we can do this every week, and inevitably we'll talk about some team that's looking like maybe the cream is rising to the top, but then it totally changes the following week. That's why I said, as much as you look at the Ravens' flaws or things they didn't do well, and I mean, just a horrendous start to Sunday's football game. I mean, the defense was an absolute disaster those first 2 drives. The offense was not very good in the first half against a Vikings defense that was missing some of their best players, including Harrison Smith going on the COVID list Sunday morning. Their star safety. So, they didn't play very well in the first half, but they turned it on and they played much better, and they made the plays they needed to make. And to your point, it required 21 rushes from Lamar Jackson. I'll point out over half of those are scrambles. So we can kind of debate that. A lot of it's dictated by the game, and
he's choosing to run a lot at a point where it looks more like it did 3 years ago, and we'll get to that. Luke's here. It's all brought to you by Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. We're going to be all over the place this week. We're at Fadley's on Wednesday with the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. Let yourself play. We're also going to be on Friday up in Timonium and Nick's Grandstand Grill, doing double duty. I got the 30th anniversary. I'm back on my feet. Ravens playing Thursday. I'm not going to Miami on Thursday, kind of uniquely. Cloudy and 72 on Sunday, Luke, in Miami. So at least I'm doing okay on the rolling the dice, and I think the pizza will be warm in Chicago next weekend. I wanted to talk about Lamar running, and I wanted to talk about that at length, and maybe we'll do that in another segment, really talk about where he was and where he's going. But for this particular game, and this is the thing that it will create the greater conversation, which is the coach is going to bristle at me for asking that question after the game because they won the game. And, whether that means they lose on Thursday to Miami. And I remember the famous Jamal Lewis getting 2,000 yards in Billick in the playoff week and the short week in Pittsburgh, because I have memories. I have nightmares of these things, right? The nightmare is every time he takes on contact, and I think we've gotten used to it. You know what I mean? Like wearing masks in this country, like things that we never used to do. It's just the way it is now. And we have a quarterback who runs into linebackers a lot, takes on a lot of contact. There used to be this get down, get out of bounds, hook slide, not take contact. Lamar's always trying to extend the play. Always. And that's the beauty, and that's the analytics. That's the first thing Harbaugh says from the math perspective of, he extends the play, and then something good could happen. Yeah, something bad could happen too. And he rarely throws the ball away. There's times where he could just dirt the ball and walk away the way Peyton Manning or guys who can't run or won't run do. Everything about this is different. My eyes are different to it. I get squeamish about every time he takes on heavy contact. And I had somebody last week, and I think it was somebody from Minnesota, or maybe it was one of the national writers. I don't know who it was. And I can go back and listen. I had Ken Belson, David Steele, a bunch of people. Somebody called him a big guy. And I'm like, no. He looks big standing next to Hollywood Brown. He looks big standing next to me, maybe. But anybody look big standing next to you, and you're a little bigger than me. He's not big. So, when we hear about that, when I look down on a sheet, Luke, and if you would have told me in 2000, what year we drafted him? 18? Was that the year? I'm losing years now. 18? If you would have said Thanksgiving of 21, he's running the ball 21 times in the middle of the season, I would just say that's no bueno. Even if you win, and they're winning, and it's great, and they're 6-2. I'm holding up. What's the car light when you're driving the Coons Ford? The yellow light, not the orange light, not the red light, but there's an orange light about this particular profile of how they're winning right now that they can't do that. They maybe they can do that January 13th in a playoff game to get to they can't do that, right? He can't run the ball 20 times a week. I just don't believe that's a victory that you're going to win a Super Bowl that way.
He's not running the ball 20 times a week. He ran the ball 21 times Sunday. He's averaging roughly. It's been a touch going into Sunday, and of course Sunday was 21 times. I'm not endorsing him running 20 plus times every week, but he hasn't been. And you have to remember part of the byproduct of this is he's kind of doing this because the pocket's not holding up very well. It's just not. And so we look at it from that standpoint. You can look at it and say, okay, I don't want him to leave the pocket because I don't want him to get hit. Well, Russell Wilson, sprained his finger to the point where he had to get surgery throwing a pass in the pocket. Joe Flacco tore his ACL in the pocket 6 years ago. We know that there's inherently danger when the quarterback has the ball in general. So a couple things come to mind here. One, their pass protection is iffy. And okay, I will agree with you. And I've said this and I've written this and he's been asked about it over the course of the season, as far as there being some times where there was a good example on Sunday where he could have run out of bounds and instead he initiates contact on the sideline. Did he pick up an extra yard or two? Yeah. Was it a crucial situation that he needed to do that? No. So those types of plays, I totally agree with you on. However, if you're not going to protect well, there's that. I mean, it just is. You say you could just throw the ball away. It's not that simple all the time. You can't just.
Well, you're not going to coach the competitive out of him, and you're not going to coach the instinct.
And you don't want to. I mean,
exactly.
And again,
the instinct is taking over now, and the instinct is give me the ball. I'm Superman, and he's been Superman since he was 8 years old. So I would agree with that.
He's been Superman at this level. What he's doing is incredibly difficult. Ask Patrick Mahomes right now how easy it is to sustain elite quarterback play. Now, it looks different, but this guy is also on pace to have not just an outstanding passing season by his standard of talking about him being a dual threat quarterback. He's having an excellent passing season, period. He stacks up favorably and well against any other quarterback in the league in that regard. The only thing holding him back right now in terms of his MVP profile is he hasn't thrown a ton of touchdown passes. And it's kind of crazy to think that because he's been right there, first or second in yards per completion. His yards per attempt is right up there with the top quarterbacks in the league. So much of his passing profile is outstanding. The only thing that's been different is he hasn't had the touchdown passes to the degree that he did 2 years ago, where we talked about the fact that he had this insane touchdown percentage. So some of that was bound to even out, and he threw 3 touchdowns on Sunday. So you kind of saw that. Second time all year he's thrown multiple touchdown passes, but he is throwing more. But at the same time, I mentioned the pass protection, and even though it did come to fruition in the second half of Sunday's game, they haven't, generally speaking, gotten a whole lot from their non-Lamar Jackson running game. So there's that as well. So I think your concerns are well-founded. I think, again, you do have to look at it and say, it wasn't by design. They didn't go into Sunday's game thinking he was going to run 21 times. I mean, Next Gen Stats tracked him as, I think, 12 of those 21 runs were scrambles. Now, I agree. There are definitely some times where they call a pass play where I think they coach it and they'll talk about it in the meeting room and say, hey, if you get this specific coverage against this pass play, this is probably a time you can take off. So I think there's some of that. So I don't want to say the scrambles are completely isolated from the idea of a design.
And I have no problem with him scrambling and getting down, or scrambling or getting out of bounds. But this fighting in the middle of the field for yards, it's just, you're not, and It scared
I hear
me
you.
3 years ago, and I think in the middle of the game, it just happens, and then he gets to the podium, and you tell him he ran 21 times, and he
Yeah.
looks at you kind of like, did I? Like,
Yeah.
because I think it gets away from them because of the way he plays the game, and I think somebody needs to stand up and say, whoa, 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 we can't win a Super Bowl like this. Like, that's not good. Now, they had to win, they have to do what they have to do, and they have to talk about it. But in the meetings this week, I would like to see him getting back to taking less contact than he's taking right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, this week might be tough to do that when you're talking to make that a point of emphasis when you're talking about
just get on the plane, kid. Get some sleep and get on the plane. Yeah,
I mean
we love our players in the National Football League. We take care of our players here.
Hey, that point of emphasis for player safety, shortening overtime from 15 minutes to 10 minutes, and yeah, you're playing a game in less than 100 hours.
Luke, it's just for times like this when we play on Thursday night. Luke Jones is here. He's in Owings Mills all week long. We're going to be talking about the game all week. We got lots of things going on around here in a very, very short week. A lot of Baltimore positive. Had a great visit with friends in Fells Point at the Chop Tank, and also a great crab cake, delicious remoulade at the Chop Tank. Also, last Wednesday we got together, Thursday at Silver Spring Mining, making some things up. So lots of great conversations here this week. We're going to get back to talking about the football game, Luke and I, and of course, if there's any breaking news, it'll come to you first on the WNST Tech Service, all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford. Dennis will be here on Thursday before the game, 3 to 5, leading you into Miami, if not temptation. Luke can be found, Baltimore Luke, out on Twitter and Facebook. You can always email me, nasty at WNST.net. Plenty more ahead on a Raven victory over the Vikings and a quick turnaround against the Dolphins. I'm Nestor. We are WNST AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.